Again, there's some basic buttons you can use. A button is something that, hi. So then we have a switch that's like an on-off, right? Switch, on-off. And then a slider, like I said, we'll use it for volume control. We'll look at how you put it on there, but we won't use it really. This example. And then, of course, a text field. Today we'll have a date. We'll put a date in the text field. One thing to keep in mind, when I was doing it, you have to put capital M's for the month, or it won't work. And lowercase for the day, and lowercase for the year. But the month has to be capital. I don't know why. I'm just pointing that out because I put lowercase m's in the example, and I'm like, why isn't the month changing? It has to be capital M. So for the text field, don't put that date in there to remember capital M's for the month. And then again, accessing values in the text field. So we've already did that with the game, right? When you click the, well, I guess we were using a button. You can use the label of the button to access the letter in the game. And then gesture recognizer. In the example today, to do the date, you have to tap, right? There's one that's called tap recognizer. So when you push, you tap the screen. In this case, in the simulator, we're using the mouse, though, not tapping. But there's a gesture recognizer is the option. It's called gesture recognizer. Is the name that you use for recognizing that. And then, of course, connecting through controls. So these are common ways that people either input or interact with your app. So let's just read through them. Let's read through them. Again, we've already seen buttons. We've used buttons before. One thing to keep in mind with a button that I was looking at is how to change the size. So let me just do some quick examples here. I'm just going to do a single, let's call it button example. So if we put a button out, the problem is it's just this size. I mean, we can drag it bigger like that. That's fine. But just the text doesn't necessarily change. You know, we're used to using Photoshop or something. When you scale something like this, right, the actual text would change size. So if you make something like this, again, this is the recognizable area of your button. You can also change the size of the text. Right? That's what I wanted to point out, is that the button. In addition, you can change the size here. If you want to make it square, you can make it square. That way, it's done without having to guess what size. So again, if you want to make it a specific size, you can do that by using this option right here, the this one for the size right here, and you can give it specific height and width, and then again this is placement. And then I was also looking at how to make round buttons. Also, in one of the videos I was watching, they were using a gradient, and they were actually making a gradient using an image. So instead of programming it, they kind of cheated, where they made like an image like this. I don't know, resolution wise, whatever, it doesn't matter. And they were using, so if you wanted to do, let's do a kind of well, that's opacity. What am I doing? This is color.
So they were making kind of, one of the videos I was watching, they were making graphics. Oosh, that's pretty ugly. That's better. Ooh, that's bad. That's better. So they were making graphics like this and saving it as a PNG. And then they were putting it into their button that way. So actually making a graphic instead of trying to program it. And then in your button, of course, you have the option for a background image right here, and you can choose it. Ooh, even though the font or the color is bad. Where's white? There we go. So you can make a gradient in Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever, save it and put it into the background of your button. I was watching a lot of examples of that online instead of trying to program a gradient, which you can do. A quicker way might be just to use a graphic, right? Simple like that, so you can do that as well. Even though it's pretty ugly. They have a lot that you know. And you've used buttons before. Again, to do the action, you have two kind of actions on there. You have the IB action, right? Is a button for, tapping and so on. They have these different controls. You have on a button, did end on exit, editing change, editing did begin, editing did end, primary action triggered, touch cancel, touch down repeat, touch drag enter, touch drag exit, touch drag inside, touch drag outside, touch up inside is the default one, right? That's the default one. And touch up outside. So these are the actual action triggers that you can have on a button. Again, the default, I believe, is touch up inside. That's if they touch the button itself. Remember, when you create an IB action, a function is passed to the sender. So in the programming, it says sender. What does the sender mean? It just means that is the button that you're clicking on, right? That's the, hey, I touched that, right? The sender refers to specific controls that trigger the action. In this case, sender is the tapped button. So again, we've done that before, where you bring up your programming. We can click on our button, control, click, and drag. We can release the mouse. Again, you have an outlet or action, and so on. Of course, you give your button a name, whatever you want to call it. There's two types, any or UI button. It depends on what you're trying to do with your button. And of course, there's the sender is here. And if you hit connect, again, UI button is normal, any. When you know that the sender will always be the same type of object, like button in this example, you can change any to specific control type UI button in this example. So again, instead of any, you can use UI button if it's always going to be a button. To make this change, you'll access properties on sender with the IB action. And then they have a print example here where they print button was tapped. Right now, the text on the button doesn't relate to the action it will trigger. Use Interface Builder to update the button's text to something more descriptive of the code it will be executed. You can also set other button attributes, including a font, alignment, shadow. Also, you can do round edges. I was watching a tutorial where they were doing, more of a pill shape instead of the square, right? you can do that as well. A switch is usually an on-off, kind of like a radio button somewhat, where you only have one answer, right? It's either yes or no, on or off, so on. A switch can be just put on by using the switch itself. Hold on, I gotta make this bigger. So we can change it switch. Again, it's a Boolean kind of object. We could put that on. Again, it's usually selected, enabled, highlighted, state is on or off. So it's like a just a yes or no, true or false kind of option. Using the assistant editor, they have an action for the switch on the view controller. As with the button action, use a descriptive name such as switch toggled and set the sender type to UI switch. Add the code that will print to the console. So again, we've used a switch before, I believe. Again, you can do an action, make a function. They just have a name called switch toggled. It's a UI switch. So again, I mean, we could simply make one here. If I can open this up. Switch toggled, and it can be a UI switch. And again, just like they have there, you can put an if statement in there. Has it been turned on or has it been turned off? So a switch is quite easy. It's a simple yes or no kind of question. Switches on, switches off. Sliders, again, are a different option where you can have a control that goes from one side to the other. Again, we'll do that after spring break for a volume control. I have a music player that we play. When you play the music, you can turn the music up and you can turn the music down. It's a simple, so I don't know if we could use a slider today and what our park thing could be. But a slider, again, is very common. People use it for brightness all the time, right? You probably turn the brightness up on your phone and turn the brightness down. What else is a slider used for? I don't know. Anybody think of what else you would use a slider? Changing color, maybe. We use it for opacity, right? You change the opacity and apps, right? Things like that. It's great for, going from 100% down to 0 or back and forth, right? So that's a typical slider. Again, we'll use it in a volume control for music. I'm not going to use that now. The next one, of course, is a text field. We'll use that for today's example when we do the map, or do the date. I'm sorry, we're going to do a date. And again, it's going to be called text field. So you can put in text field. In a text field, you can, of course, stretch it out to be whatever size you want it to be. I'm going to put in some attributes here. I'm just going to put these on in case I test it. One thing about a text field is that you could put text in there originally. Like today, we're going to use a date. So you could put in enter a date. And you can have text in there, right? So this is sort of telling the user what they're supposed to do with the text, right? So you can put in where it says text, wherever it was there. Oh, right underneath the option there. In a text field, you can put the date in there. You can change the font, size. What else? You can have the automatically adjust font, placeholder text. I just put text in there. What are some of the attributes? Using the assistant editor, you can add an IB action using the primary action trigger event from the text field to view controller Swift. Use a descriptive name such as keyboard return key tapped and set the sender to UI text field. Use the action to print the current text to the text field. So it looks like you can enter the text there with the keyboard return key tapped. Remember that the text fields can also trigger code when the user edits the content of the field using an assistant editor. Add an IB action using edit changed control event from the text field to view controller Swift. Use a descriptive name such as text changed and set the sender type to UI text field. Use the action to print the current text to the field. So again, you can tap it and change the text. Let's just try. I love my button. Love my button. Again, these are just common on, off, button clicked, text field for text. Text fields are very flexible and should be configured to the best fits the situation they are used in. For example, you can set the keyboard to display different keys based on whether the user is entering an email address or URL. You can also turn autocorrect on or off. Whoosh! You love the autocorrect, don't you? It always puts the wrong word in there for me, doesn't it? Set the text field to secure input fields to hide the characters as the user types them. Take some time to explore the options and use them appropriately when building your app. I was watching a video where he was using the quick jump, and I haven't really done that, where you hold the command key down and click on the option or the property that you want to change, and then go to the definition. I was watching that in the date video that I was watching, how to configure the date. And he was going and showing the controls there. So you can see all the different options for a certain switch, right? Tint, tint color, tint image, off image, and so on. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Again, you can go back to your programming. Again, I was holding down the option key, or no, the command key. I was watching that in the video and just showing you different ways of looking at the programming. What else? Actions versus outlets. You can create outlets that allow actions to access properties on your views and controls even if the view or control isn't the sender. For example, you may have an outlet for a label that gets updated by a button action, right? We've already seen that before, where you click a button and it changes something else. In the steps below, you'll change the button tapped function triggered by the tap button to access the current is state of the switch and the current value of the slider. We don't have a slider on there right now. Use the same control drag technique in the editor. We already did that. But again, remember, your button can have both an action and an outlet. We saw that both, right? Where you actually can tap it or change the text. We did that with the light example. Remember that, where you had an action for the button. You tapped it, as well as you can change the text for, and the outlet would be the changing of the text, right? And the action would be the tapping. We don't have to do that. Gesture recognizers is another example. So, what the gesture recognizers is it's recognizing that you've done something. Either tapped a button, clicked outside of the area. Like in the date example that we do in a minute, did they click outside of the area? Or if they didn't click at all. That's another one as well. Each of the controls interact with gestures. Buttons and switches are configured to work with taps. Sliders work with swipes. A gesture is tied to a single view, but a view can have multiple gestures. For example, a switch responds to a tap, but the user can also swipe a switch left or right and turn it on and off. You can add your own gesture recognizer on top of any view you wish, from simple taps to complex pinches, long presses, and rotations. And of course, games, you have all kinds of different gestures, right? And things like that. In this example, you add a tap gesture recognizer on top of your view controller to begin search the object library for gesture to see the full list. Again, you have gestures in the option here. You can type in gesture, and they have tap gestures, pinch gesture, rotation gesture, swipe gesture, pan gesture, screen edge pan recognizer, long press gesture. And one of the things I don't like about the Mac OS is that where you push down and you push harder, right? They thought it was really cool when they added it, but a lot of people got frustrated with that. Anybody get frustrated with that too? They have like a pressure, if you hold the button down for a while, it does something, right?
I like it.
You like it? The problem is it confuses me, that's all. Right? You have to get used to it. For me, it does. So they have multiple gestures in there. And again, tap gesture, pinch gesture, rotate gesture, swipe gesture, pan, and so on. Grab the tap gesture recognizer and drag it to the top view that should respond to a tap event. In this case, drag it on top. Again, you can drag the gesture on top. Where was I at? Tap gesture. You drag it to a button or a switch or a date or on top. And that on top then would be for the entire app. In this case, drag it on top of the view controller. You will use the recognizer added to the document outline. Select the recognizer and open the attributes and sector. Different gestures will contain a different list of properties. You can adjust the number of taps that the recognizer requires, such as a single tap or double tap, as well as the number of touches or fingers required to trigger any action. So it's very customizable, I guess. Again, if you click on it, if I can find it, it's right here. You can click on it over here. It's for the whole, and notice it's right here at the top. See that up there? And then it does have attributes as well. And again, number of taps or touches. What's the difference between tap and a touch?
Touch with one finger, two fingers.
I guess, I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I don't know.
Let's see how many maximum touches you can do. More than 5.
So 2 fingers maybe? Is that what touches would be? 2 fingers, I guess?
Yeah.
Touches, cancels touches in view, delayed touches ended, number of taps. Using the assistant editor IB action from the recognizer to view controller Swift, add a descriptive name such as respond to tap gesture and set the sender type to tap gesture recognizer. The following implementation of respond to tap gesture will determine if the user tapped when the recognizer action was called and will print out the XY value of to the console. So again, you can respond to tap gesture. It's a function there. Again, sender, and then the property is the UI tap gesture organizer, and so on. Build and run your app, and you'll see it'll tell you where you've touched. Basically, the XY coordinates where you touched is the example that they have there, right there, right? So again, you can drag it in. And what did they call it? What did they call it? Respond to tap. Respond to tap gesture. Respond to tap gesture. Like that. Action. and then so there is a sender. Jeez, I'm running out of space here. And then they have any there. We probably should have changed that to the UI tap gesture recognizer. Let's do that again. Let's undo that. Let me try. Oh, it's going to do this no matter what, isn't it? That switch is still in there. Whatever. Running out of space here. I don't know how to delete that. Whatever.
You just cut it in the text.
Delete it. How about that? And then let me get rid of the switch. There we go. I just wanted to try the tap gesture, that's all. Now I have broken outlets. Whatever, we can move on. You get the idea, though. How does the interface builder connect controls to actions? It is helpful to understand how a connection controls to actions through code. At the very least, it will help you to understand the work that interface builder is doing on your behalf. To demonstrate connecting a control to a method programmably, you would disconnect the existing button from the button tapped action and reconnect the two in code. Highlight the button in your storyboard, then open the connection inspector in the list of control events. You can see the button executes the button tapped method when your finger presses down, then up inside the control. Tap the X next to the method, breaking the connection between the button and action. In order to connect the button to a method programmably, you will need a reference in the button. Again, you can make an outlet to change the whatever options you want. The best place to connect the button to the action is right after the view is finished loading. Add the following code to the bottom of the view did load. And of course, we know how to do that already. They have some examples here. Let's do the quiz, and then we'll do the date. You have enough knowledge now to do the date. Which of the following allows you to execute code for a specific control event? Action, right? Which of the following allows you to access properties of a specific view or control? Outlet. Which of the following would be the right time to use a button? When you want the user to be able to tap an image or execute or text to execute code? Yes. When you want the user to toggle a setting or preference? When you want the user to choose a value between a minimum and maximum, that would be a slider. This would be a switch. When you want the user to enter text, that would be a text field. So it's going to be, what, A, right? So, right? This is the button. This is a switch. This is a slider. This is a text field. Which of the following would be right time to use a switch? When you want to toggle a setting, right? Which would the following be a slider? Well, we already know that one. That's what we just talked about. And which would be the right time to use a text field? The last one. Okay, congratulations. You are smarter than you need to be, right? Okay, so I'm going to go back to my app, and I'm going to make one more view. And that view will be for camping. And we'll make a text field for them to enter their name. And then we will make a text field for them to make a date. And then we could, I don't know, use a switch for something. I don't know. So again, I'm going to go back to my app that I was working on and add those. So If I could find my Xcode here. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to make one last view controller. Oh, I never finished my app here. How did we finish this? I think some of you got it to work. What, you put a comma? Oh. So I have an image. Every time I type, though, it deletes them. Well, I got two. How about that? Let me try it. Let me try it. So again, there's a comma between them, right? Do you see that? A comma between the pictures. Of course, they're not in the right dimension. What if we rotate? Look, it's below. You would have to change your auto layout to make it work properly, probably. Okay, let's at least make one more. Okay, so again, I'm going to make one more view controller. One more view controller. Again, this one will be for camping. So again, I'm going to click and make one more view controller. Let me drag that out. If I can get it out there somewhere. Let me zoom out a little bit here if I can. And let's change the color of that one so we can see it. Purple. How about purple? There you go. Again, to program it, we want to connect it to this button right here. So I'm going to use the control key, click and drag onto the view controller. Show. Also, we can copy the, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. We can copy the, hold on. Let me zoom in. We can copy the top part here. We could just grab the entire no, I can't grab it. I would bring up that window again. My layer window. Or you can hold down Option and click and drag, right? There we go. Oh, I need the back button though. Option, click and drag. No, not that one. And then let me center that, or give it some options here. How about we just use the standard? No. There we go. Suggested constraints. And then the last thing is to put the back button in there. I'm going to drag the back button to the back. Okay, so we got back to main menu. Okay, you've done that already. You should know how to do that by now, how to get it back there and stuff. Okay, so down below, we're going to put some text that says for your campsite. So again, I'm going to put some text in there. First one will be just a label. And let's just call it camping. Let's make that a little bigger. Next, we'll put another label on. And that'll be choose date. How about that? And so that's just a plain label. And then the last one we'll put in is the date that they're going to do. So we'll follow the kind of the video. It's not that hard to actually get it to put the date in there. So choose a date, so let's put that in. That'll be a text field. So we'll put in text field. There it is, field. And I'm going to stretch that out. Well, it doesn't need to be all the way across. How about halfway? And then let's put some, how about we stack that together into a stack and then give it some constraints. Oh, actually we should have given the text field first. Let me undo that real quick. First I want to give the actual text field some constraints so that it doesn't shrink down when I put it into a stack. To do that, you can give it some constraints, not height and width, but at least the width, and give it a width. So I'm going to make it, yeah, it don't even need this. I'm going to make it 200 width, whatever the default is there, right? And then I'm going to put it into a stack. There. Then I can take the stack and make it constraints. Okay. So again, I gave the actual text field a width using the constraints so that it doesn't shrink down. Then we can start programming it. It doesn't like it because it doesn't know how high it is. That's all. Let's not worry about that. You can make it bigger if you want. You can also put some text in there, placeholder text, add a date, add a date. So again, I just used a plain text field. I gave it some constraints, so the width is 200 across. I put it in a stack with the other text that's in there, and now we can go and program the date. Again, there is a built-in date picker in the UI, and you've probably seen it before. It's kind of a rolling thing. If you look at Canvas, you can see the properties. So let's go to Canvas. Canvas. What am I looking at here? Again, here's the properties for the date picker. Of course, that's sort of what the date picker looks like. It's the rolling. You can add a date picker to your interface. You can configure the date picker. You can use the date picker only for handling selections of times and dates. You don't need to do time. You can just do a date or a time. You don't have to do both. The date picker has properties to it. You can limit to certain days as well, and so on. So you can have time as well, right? Time as well. You can have it respond to user interactions, and so on. The mode is called date picker mode. And we're not going to do time. The appearance of the UI date picker is not customizable. You can't change the color. And so on. And so you can see some of the properties here. Date, locale, and so on. So I find this probably to be the easiest.
Our email this month looks great.
Constant contact email marketing. Powerful stuff.
Love concept.
Hello everyone and welcome to the complete iOS app development bootcamp.
Hello and welcome back.
So again, I followed this tutorial to make the date picker. We don't have to watch the whole thing. We can jump through it and figure it out. Basically, the picker. You can bring the date up, but you have to take the data that you put in there and put it into the text field. Is the challenging part. Then the other challenging part is if the person deselects it or doesn't choose a date, what do you do, right? So he goes through this tutorial.
Let's begin. Once you have your single view iOS application view.
Again, he puts what we already did.
Here. Just gonna drag it out.
Put a text field on there. Give it some constraints. We've already done that.
Code to create the interface builder outlet for our text field.
So again, he just goes what we did already. First step is to make an outlet or an action. Can't remember if he did an outlet or an action.
Release, and we'll create a new connection outlet type. We'll just call this input text field.
So again, to make the date, I'm going to bring up the. Oh, we didn't make one yet, did we? We have to make some code for this and connect it, right? So we need to make a Cocoa Touch for this view, right? So the first step is to make a Cocoa Touch for this view. To do that, we're going to go under File, New, File, File, New File. And we're going to do a Cocoa Touch for that view. Give it a name. What are we doing? We're doing camping, right? I'm going to call it Camping View Controller. Camping View Controller. And it's going to be a UI View Controller. And we can put it in our, with the rest of our Swifts, if we can find it, this one, in the Joshua tree right here, with the rest of the other view controllers. And then once we made it, we got to go back to our storyboard, select the actual view, go into the attributes here, or the identity inspector, and make it here. What do we call it? Camping, I believe, right? Camping. No, there it is. Camping view controller. So connect that to this view, and then we can start programming our date, right? So make yourself a program file for that view. I called it Camping View Controller. And again, you connect it here. And once we have it connected, then we can start. The first step is to make an outlet. Hold on, let me move my windows around here. I'm running out of space here. Here we go. So underneath the Camping View Controller here, I can grab my text field, use the Control key, click and drag, make an outlet, and I believe he called it Input Text Field. Input Text Field, like that. It's going to be a UI text field, and I'm going to hit connect. So that's where I'm at right now. If I roll over, you can see it highlights the text field. So I made an outlet for the actual date. Everybody got that? I'll pause for a minute. Oh. Hold on. Got too many things open here.
And once that connection is created, you'll see that little gray dot here. So if you mouse over it, you'll see that the text field highlights in blue, meaning that the connection has been established. I'll also go ahead and change my view's background color to something different, so it's not white on white, so we can see it a little bit.
All right, change my background color to purple.
More easily. So that looks a little bit better. Now hooking up the date picker is easier than you think, but let's understand what we're doing before we actually write the code. So let's take a look at UI text field in a little bit more in depth. Command click on it and then hit jump to definition. And inside of the UI text field class, let's look for the input view. And so this is a view that we can use to basically kind of add in things that need to be presented from a UI text field context. So obviously the documentation says it's presented when the object becomes the first responder, and it's really just a UI view. So we could set really anything that derives from UI view as the input view. There's also the input accessory view, which you can use for adding in custom toolbars and things like that. So you can add like a done button or a close button on a toolbar. But we're just going to stick with the input view for this tutorial to keep it simple. And so the easiest way to go about doing that is going back into our view controller and starting to get that set up. So what we can do is create a private var. We'll just call it our date picker.
So I don't know, you might have seen the private before, and you know, it was used a lot in previous Swift. I don't see it as much in the newer Swift. But it's basically meaning that it's only in this view, right? The private means it's only being used here in this view controller and not throughout the entire app.
Type UI date picker.
So he makes a variable called date picker, and it's called UI date picker. Of course, he has a question mark because it doesn't have a value yet, right? So again, he starts by making a variable, and so he made it private variable, and he called it date picker with the capital P. And that is basically a UI date picker with a question mark. And you can see it right here. And of course, put a question mark on there. Or it'll give you an error message. And it's already giving me an error message, because it doesn't know what date picker is yet. We need to make a function. We need to make a function called date picker, basically.
And inside of view did load.
Oh, he put that up top. I put it in the wrong spot. Up here. Under here. Up where you put variables up there. So down below then, he's going to make a function for that. So you got your date picker.
If we take a look at UI date picker, same way, just by command clicking it and jumping to definition, we can also see here that it derives from UI control. It has a date picker mode, a lot of properties and settings related to date-specific things. But really what we care about is date picker mode, because we're going to use the date format here, although you can change it to time.
See, they have time, date, and date and time both.
Hierarchy. So if we look at UI control, and we command click into that, you'll see that it also derives from UI view. So that's how we can set the input view. But additionally here, UI control works similarly to a UI button, which means we can add a selector programmatically, or basically a handler for when a value is changed. For example, when we're picking a different time on the picker, just like we would with a UI button. And that's important because that's how we're going to bind the value and dismiss our picker when a user's made a selection. So let's go back into the view controller now and start hooking that up. So what we'll do on the date picker is...
So again, down below in the view did load, he added a date picker, UI date picker. So the same word here, date picker equals date picker equals a UI date picker, a UI date picker, and that's it. So again, down in the view did load, you took the date picker here, the variable you made, and connected to the UI date picker basically. Next,
set that format. So date picker,
You need to
dot,
bring up the
date
date picker.
picker mode.
Date picker mode.
For us, it's going to be dot date. So just that. And once we've configured that, we can add it to the input text field. So we'll do input text field dot input view equals date picker. So really, it's as simple as that. At this point,
It'll actually bring up the date picker. So again, you got your date picker mode equals date. Date picker equals date picker mode. Equals date. And then,
Something wrong.
oh, did I spell it wrong? Oh, yes, this is not equal. Yeah, I see that. And then to bring it onto the screen, you need to connect it to the actual box, right? So the input field is what the next line is. And that would be connecting it, and we called the box input text field, right? Input text field. So we need to combine it to the input text field. Date picker. And it doesn't like my question mark. Did I spell this wrong? Yeah. No. I spelled it with a capital D. No. Put the question mark back in. Yes. That's better. And the UI text field has no member input. Input view. There we go. So in doing so, it'll bring it up, but it won't put the date in the box. Okay, so the next step would be to, once you choose the date, how does it get into the box itself? So we can run our app right now. Oops, I got it. Uh-oh, upside down. How do I change that? Left. Left. There we go. So my camping goes to camping, and it should bring up the date picker, right? Look, you can bring it up. But it's not putting the data into the box. So now we need, so when you click on it, it brings up the date, but we don't get the date into the box. So the next step would be to put the date into the box. So see if you can get to that point.
let's go ahead and test that out in the simulator and see what it looks like. That little bit up here so that we can make a selection and dismiss the date picker. So as I was saying before, we can use a lot of the things like a UI button. So we can add a selected handler programmatically, just like we could do it for a button programmatically. So if we start on the date picker here, and we do add target, and that target's going to be self.
Again, the self means you're just doing it on the actual text field itself, right?
That action is going to be a selector, or a method that's going to be invoked as a callback or a handler. So in our case, it'll be view controller.
So again, he put it here underneath the date picker option right there. Again, we have date picker, add target, self. So you have a target, again, it'll be self. The action, it will be a selector. Selector is there. The selector is a view controller. View controller, and 4 will be a UI control event. You're getting an error message here because you need to make a function for this somewhere.
.date changed. And we'll just call date picker as the argument to that method.
So inside here, what's that?
You have to put a hash. Hash select.
A what?
Hash symbol. Selector. Just after the action colon here. You have to put a hash.
Date changed, date picker. Inside there. And then that is a date picker. And we need to make a function called date changed. Date changed.
And for UI control events, .value changed.
What did you say? Value changed? Valued dot changed? Is that what he had there? With a capital C. Dot value changed.
Value changed.
All one word.
Yeah. And C is capital.
There. So we're getting this error message here because we haven't made a function yet.
Now, so let's go ahead and add that method really fast here. So func date changed. That takes a date picker, and that's the UI date picker that was changed. And we're going to probably get a compile error here saying we need to expose this to Objective-C, so that we need to add in the @objc flag to that method. So if we hit fix, Xcode will handle that for us, and you'll see that puts the @objc right here. And so for the .value changed, if we take a command click and jump to definition here, for the, see it looks like Xcode broke. Value changed. Yeah, so for the different kinds of UI control events we have, you have touch up inside, touch up outside, touch cancel, and then value change. And this is the one that corresponds for what we're doing. But for a button, you would use touch up inside if you're doing a button programmatically. So there's a lot of different states here that you can use that kind of fall under the UI control category. So let's go back.
So again, he made a function called add changed, date changed, I'm sorry, and it's the same date changed here. It's a UI date picker, which we already have here, the UI date picker. And so,
Date picker here is a parameter, right? Is that like a,
what's that?
is that a square? Oh, it's a function. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So a function is date. What did I just say? Date change. That's it. Date changed. And then changed with a capital C. And then we're going to add date picker colon UI date picker. Date picker colon UI date picker. And then he said there you needed to add the Objective C code, which would be the @ sign OBC. Objective C. And still getting this error. Doesn't like selector. Thank you. Still doesn't like it. And we have date change. Did I spell it right? Did I copy? Oh no, that's value changed. Oh, here's date changed. Let me copy that. Nope.
That was date picker. That was the function. That was the function.
Date picker right here.
Date change is the function, and you can remove the view controller dot.
You don't need this? No. Date picker. Did I spell that wrong? Colon. No.
What's the error?
The UI control event has no member value changed. Value changed. Not valued. Value changed. There we go. One missing D.
And inside of here, once we get our date picker, we want to do a couple of things here. So the date picker that comes back as a parameter has a .date. That's going to be the date that the user selected in the text field. Now, we could go ahead and just bind this, right? You know, we can convert it to a string and bind it, but we probably want to format our date so that it looks a little bit more human-friendly or human-readable. So what we can do to handle that is create a date formatter. We can set the format. Equal to a string value for a valid date format. Now, you can look these up online, and there's a bunch of different kinds of date formats, but I'm going to just to keep it simple and do a month, a day, and then a 4-number year.
And again, this is what I was talking about before. He used capital M's here, and I tried lowercase m in there, and it wouldn't change the month. it wouldn't change. So make sure you put capital M in there. So basically, he makes a constant called date formatter, of course, equals date formatter, and then this is the way it should look when the person chooses it, right? You got month, day, and year. So inside this function here, we're going to make a value. No. Date picker. Let date picker. Oh, date formatter, he calls it. Sorry. format. Date formatter equal date formatter. Date formatter equals date format. Did I spell that right? Dot date format. Format. And then the date again was capital M, lowercase d, and lowercase y. I believe so.
For my format. And then what I'm going to do here
the
is
4 Ys.
let the input text field dot text equals the
Date formatter.
dot
Date.
string from date, and that's going to be the date picker dot date. That's it.
Again, we're using the name of the text field called input text field. 4 Ys for a year. 4 Ys for the year. And then input text field is the name of the box, right? Field, F-I-E, no, there it is. Input text field is text equal to date format, and he makes it a string, date formatter, string, and then that string is going to be the date picker date. Where am I at here? Date formatter, and then dot string. String, not spring. It seems like spring. And then that's from what? From date picker date. From date picker dot date. Did I spell that right? This one, date picker. That's this date picker. It doesn't like date formatter. Oh, here's the date formatter right there. Lowercase string. There we go. Did I spell this right? Do we need string in here? No, it's lowercase. I don't know. Does it put it in the box? Let's try it. Hold on. Oh, I got an error. What was the name of this? Date? It's a from. Oh.
At that point, we've formatted the date, and we've made the selection here. Now, there's one other thing we want to do here. When we've actually made a selection, we want to dismiss the input view. We want to dismiss the date picker. And now, we have no way of doing that really at all, as I showed you earlier when we ran this, but what we can do is call view.endEditing and set that to true.
I still have an error. Editor placeholder and source file. What does that mean? From? 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 It doesn't like from. What is from? For? No.
No, it's date format.
Format? With a date formatter. Is it format or formator?
Formatter dot string. On date picker dot date.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm able to get it work.
Huh?
Mine is compiling.
Yours is compiling?
Yeah. I can put in the date.
It puts in the date?
Yeah. If you click on the array, we'll see what's complaining. Placeholder and source file.
Mm-hmm.
Can you teach it again during lab time?
No, we're almost done. Almost done.
Oh, it's working. Okay, I'll come back. It's working.
Yours is working?
Yeah.
Yes. Date formatter dot string from date picker dot date.
Dateformer dot string from?
From colon date picker dot date.
Like that.
so weird. It's the same code that I have. Mine works as well. Wait, scroll up a little. Are your brackets correct?
Added placeholder in source file. You must have placed some placeholder.
What's that?
I think you have placed a placeholder like enter the date. So that is giving some error. Your placeholder is enter a date.
Oh. Add a date? Is that what you're...
Yeah, that is giving the problem because we have not put any placeholder. You did?
Yeah, I
That's
didn't do that.
we
So it doesn't like add a date in there. Is that what you're...
That's just a default value.
I don't know why it gives that.
It doesn't like that.
Oh, so default value has to be a date format. That's why it's a string. I think if you put some value of date, valid date, I think then it might work.
Yeah, 'cause why would it work?
Okay, let me try again. Still doesn't like my placeholder text. I don't know, but yours works though, right? Okay. I don't know what to tell you. So what are some of the other things we would do in a camping app? Choose a date. What we would have to. I was thinking of a pull-down menu as well. Here's some tutorial on how to do a pull-down menu. This video talks about how to make the buttons. Remember I was showing you how to put the graphic inside the button? He talks a lot about different ways to program your button to look nice. This one has a drop-down menu.